My dear brother.
Dear beloved.
Dear Perron. We have been walking for days, with almost nothing in our bellies. We're up to our knees in mud. Some men have even lost their shoes along the way, and are walking barefoot.
Despite the terrible night that we spent in the rain, we acclaim our Empereur with all our might, even though we know that for many of us, this is doubtless our last day.
I could not tear my eyes away from that man. He had gained weight. His movements were ponderous and his face was closed. He was no longer the General Bonaparte of his early years. But he was still our emperor, the victor of so many battles. And yet the man was dragging us down with him. How was that possible?
Monday, June 12th, 1815.
We left Paris at daybreak. I was going to join up with my army, 120,000 brave men at the Belgian border. Together, we would head for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We were going to take on the enemies allied against the Empire. And the first one would be that vainglorious Irishman, Wellington. I was filled with the rage to win. It would be my best campaign, the mother of all battles, my masterpiece.
In April 1814, France was drained dry. Napoleon's murderous campaigns had killed off close to 1 million men. The emperor had conquered the bulk of Europe in a true bloodbath.
C'est quand même un homme que rien n'arrête. Lorsqu'il s'est fixé un objectif, il lui faut l'atteindre dans les plus brefs délais, et s'il y a des dégâts, tant pis.
April 11th, 1814. The legend is cracking. Defeated by his enemies and abandoned by France, Napoleon is forced to abdicate. The emperor bows down to the United Kingdom, Prussia, Russia, and Austria, which had formed a coalition against him. The victorious European powers set Louis XVI's younger brother, Louis XVIII, on the throne. Napoleon, for his part, was sent into exile on the island of Elba, off the Italian coast.
The eagle is down on one knee, but he is not ready to fall. I shall return to fight these vainglorious kings until they bow down before the imperial eagle.
February 26th, 1815. The coalition's fears are borne out. Bonaparte manages to escape from Elba. He lands at Golfe-Juan on French soil with a scant 1,000 men. It takes him little time to flesh out his troops. His aim was to reach Paris as quickly as possible and overthrow Louis XVIII. 44-year-old Pierre Lantelme comes from Lyon. He has served as a grenadier in the Imperial Guard, Napoleon's elite unit, for many long years. He's one of the 600 soldiers who followed the emperor to Elba.
My beloved, we have just left ship in Golfe-Juan, under the hot sun. It's unbelievable. When people catch sight of the Emperor, they run up and throw themselves at his feet. Even the soldiers who were supposed to prevent our passage have joined us. Today, more than ever, we shall follow him in his new fight. Long live the Emperor. Vive la France.
March 20th, 1815. Napoleon enters Paris. Louis XVIII had fled to Ghent the day before. The Allies saw Napoleon's return as an intolerable provocation. To put an end to Bonaparte once and for all, the British government and the King of the Netherlands appointed the Duke of Wellington to head their troops stationed on Belgian soil.
We are the enemies of a single man, who's used his influence over the French army to overthrow King Louis XVIII's throne. So we're not engaged in a war against France, but rather a war against Bonaparte and his army.
The reputation that Wellington had, and indeed still has, is that of a man who is fairly cold, who's fairly aloof, who is a thinker, who plans his maneuvers very carefully. He doesn't take many risks. He has nothing of the excitability and nothing of the Mediterranean warmth of Napoleon.
All of Europe mobilized against Napoleon. France was caught in a vice. The Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Dutch army and Marshal Blucher's Prussian army in the north, the Russians, Austrians, and Piemontese in the east, and the Portuguese and Spaniards in the south. All in all, close to 1 million men were converging on France. James Clements, a 34-year-old Liverpudlian, belongs to the 33rd Regiment of Halkett's Brigade. A jobless former convict, he signed up as a foot soldier in 1814. He's been stationed on Belgian soil for several months. Acting under Wellington's orders, his brigade is getting ready to take on Napoleon's troops.
Section will retire in column of files from the right. Right?
Peter, my dear brother,
Face!
by the time you get this letter, I may be dead. If only you knew how fed up I am with the army. The pay's good, we're well fed, but we're exhausted by the forced marches, and dragging one's feet is out of the question. The officers immediately lash out with their whips. Would that we might have done with these accursed French, so that we could go home.
War is inevitable, and time is against Napoleon. The Emperor sets up his command hastily. He appoints Ney and Grouchy, amongst others, at its core. These two marshals will have major roles in the coming tragedy. Monday, June 12th, 1815.
My decision is taken. We shall launch a surprise attack on the coalition armies closest to Paris. We shall take on Wellington's Anglo-Dutch troops and Blucher's Prussian army, both stationed in Belgium.
Given the European coalition, wasn't the battle lost from the start? The enemy is powerful, but Napoleon is convinced that if he gets the jump on the adversary, he'll be able to win his gamble. Wednesday, June 14th, 1815. Napoleon's army is stationed not far from the Belgian border. Marcel Lonquet, 34, comes from Tours. He's serving in the 8th Line Regiment of the French Infantry.
My dear brother, I should have listened to you when I drew a bad number. I should have shot off my thumb or broken my front teeth. Then I would not have been able to shoot, and they would not have sent me to the regiment. If I do not come back, look after Louise and the children for me.
C'étaient des garçons qui n'avaient pas le choix, qui n'ont pas pu échapper à la conscription, qui se sont retrouvés complètement éloignés de leur famille, Et ce sont des garçons déracinés qui n'ont plus qu'une seule attache, c'est leur régiment, et qui ne voient plus très bien comment mener leur vie autrement qu'en restant dans la solidarité régimentaire. Et puis certains ont pu tout simplement se laisser entraîner par le mouvement bonapartiste.
Napoleon is preparing to take on two formidable adversaries, Britain's Wellington and the Prussian Field Marshal Blücher, renowned for his aggressiveness.
Those that are interested in history regard Blücher as some sort of wild character who was completely out of control. He was also a very aggressive hussar commander, cavalry commander. He was described as marshal forwards. Blücher was passionately despised Napoleon. He was determined to put an end to his regime.
Wellington and Blücher's forces totaled 215,000 men. Napoleon's army of 120,000 men is thus smaller than the enemy's combined forces, but greater than each of them. The Emperor will thus try to keep Wellington and Blücher's armies separate, to beat them one at a time. A risky plan that depends on speed of execution and unquestionable victories. Friday, June 16th, 1815.
My plan is unfolding as foreseen. To open the way to Bruxelles, I'm asking Maréchal Ney to drive the English from Quatre Bras crossroads. For my part, I am leaving with the bulk of the army to take on the Prussians who are occupying Ligny.
Amongst these men ready to fight for France is Jacques Desmoulins, 24, a Belgian from Braine-l'Alleud, a few miles from Waterloo. He, too, had been a foot soldier in the 8th Line Regiment since 1813, when Belgium was still part of France.
We are here, finally. The Emperor says, soldiers, we have forced marches to do, battles to wage, and dangers to overcome. But at the end of the road, victory and glory will be ours.
We thought it was just a rear guard, but the entire enemy army was attacking us. Their shots cut many of us down. Dozens of camarades fell beside me. I hope that I won't end up cannon fodder in this war.
After a particularly bloody battle, Napoleon overcomes the Prussians, who pull back towards Wavre. As for Marshal Ney, whilst he failed to crush the English, he mauled them enough to make them pull back towards Waterloo, albeit at the cost of heavy losses. But on this day, June 16th, Bonaparte makes a big mistake. He gives no order to pursue the Prussians, whom he's certain to have annihilated. That was a serious mistake, for old Blücher has not had his last word.
Napoléon n'organise pas immédiatement cette poursuite et il va laisser une demi-journée d'avance aux troupes prussiennes et cette demi-journée, elle ne sera jamais rattrapée parce que, à certains moments, on ne saura même pas où sont les Prussiens.
Not until the next day, Saturday, June 17th, does Napoleon make up his mind to send Marshal Grouchy after the Prussians. But the orders are not very clear.
L'Empereur tells me, give chase to the Prussians, never lose sight of them, and complete their defeat by attacking them as soon as you reach them. I pointed out to him that if the Prussians had continued their retreat throughout the night, they already had 15 to 16 hours march on our troops.
N'importe quel commandant de troupes pouvait comprendre qu'il fallait essayer de recoller aux Prussiens et de les empêcher de pouvoir rejoindre Wellington, mais les ordres sont venus très tard. Et cela, c'est de la responsabilité de Napoléon.
Does Napoleon truly believe that the Prussians can no longer do any harm? This is where the tragedy of Waterloo gels. Saturday, June 17th, 7 a.m. Wellington positioned himself at Mont-Saint-Jean, a stone's throw from Waterloo, because he'd visited the place a year before. He knew that the terrain was ideal for the defensive battle that he foresaw.
Het belangrijke punt, het is een helling. En Wellington heeft daar de mogelijkheid om zijn infanterie op te stellen op de achterhelling. En dan is de infanterie beveiligd tegen vijandelijk artillerievuur, want het schiet er overheen. Dat was een tactisch groot voordeel.
June 17th, 1815, 7 p.m. Napoleon reaches Mont-Saint-Jean. He lacks information. He does not know that the Prussians are getting themselves back in marching order in Wavre, a few miles away. He's unaware of the exact makeup of Wellington's army. However, Napoleon is convinced that the British forces' morale is in their boots, and he's going to crush them. His only worry is the weather. Won't the rain and mud blunt the power of his attack?
Night is going to fall. I order my troops to set up camp and to get some rest. My men have marched more than 30 kilometers in one day. They are exhausted and famished. But tomorrow, if the weather improves, we shall cook these Englishmen's goose.
The Emperor sets up his headquarters at the farm known as Du Caillou. But his room is not ready, for the weather is so awful that his valet and his personal effects have been delayed.
I've put some bales of straw in a doorway so that l'Empereur can rest. In my 15 years of service, I've never seen him in such a state. He looks somber, tired, as if his thoughts were elsewhere.
Il a vieilli et son état physique est vraiment assez lamentable à Waterloo et ça a pu bien entendu avoir une influence.
He was suffering from stomach cancer or something that in the 20th century, 21st century would be diagnosed as stomach cancer. It wasn't diagnosed in these terms at the time.
Whilst Napoleon tries to get some rest, Wellington is busy strengthening his positions.
The three outposts in front of our lines must be strengthened, namely Hougoumont Farm on the left, La Haye Sainte in the middle, and Papelotte Farm on our right.
Wellington is worried. He has no news from Blucher. The Duke spends the night of the 17th of June at his headquarters in Waterloo, sending and receiving messages and discussing his battle plan with his generals. Meanwhile, his troops camp out in the rain. In times of war, looting the villages is commonplace.
Il était obligé de marauder partout, il fouillait tout ce qu'il y avait comme maison, les fermes, il pillait tout, même si c'était interdit, il ne savait pas faire autrement, sinon il ne mangeait rien.
We found a rabbit, and one of our corporals, who is a butcher's boy, roasted it. But it was awful. Lacking salt, he seasoned it with gunpowder. Tomorrow, we're going to fight on empty bellies. Luckily, we still have a little aquavita left.
– 7 a.m. Grouchy, still chasing after the Prussians, writes to Napoleon.
Sire, I shall reach Wavre this evening and shall thus be between Wellington, whom I assume to be retreating before your Majesty, and the Prussian army. I require instructions as to what your Majesty would have me do.
Did this decisive report ever reach Napoleon? No one knows. Sunday, June 18th, 8 a.m. Napoleon is breakfasting with his generals. He seems to be ready to celebrate his victory. But his chief of staff is uneasy. He suggests the emperor call back Marshal Grouchy's 33,000-man force, busy pursuing the Prussians. To everyone's surprise, Napoleon refuses to do so.
Nonsense. The Prussian army is completely beaten. I shall attack the English army and beat it. The British oligarchy will be overthrown. France will rise more glorious, more powerful and greater than ever. Messieurs, if my orders are carried out correctly, we shall sleep in Bruxelles this evening.
Napoléon a l'air très confiant. Et en réalité, déjà s'élève une discussion. Faut-il rappeler le corps du général Grouchy? Faut-il faire marcher toutes les troupes contre Wellington? Et c'est un débat qui a commencé à la ferme du Caillou au matin du 18 juin et qui n'est encore pas terminé aujourd'hui.
The Emperor has decided to delay the attack because the fields and our weapons are soaked. From where I stand, I have a clear view of the little crophead. He looks calm. We acclaim him with all our might. The English are very close. They can certainly see us and hear our shouts.
C'est un des champs de bataille parmi les plus petits en surface, 4 km sur 4. Une très grande concentration humaine, beaucoup d'artillerie, plusieurs centaines de canons, beaucoup de cavalerie. Et donc c'est après 4 jours de poursuite, de course. Et ce sont des dizaines de kilomètres d'hommes qui sont engagés. 4 jours après donc cette course qu'on se retrouve à Waterloo. Ce sont des hommes qui sont épuisés, qui ont faim, qui ont sommeil, qui sont sales et qui vont se battre comme des lions.
June 18th, 9:30 a.m. Wellington finishes positioning his troops on the Mont-Saint-Jean plateau.
I've given orders to stay behind the ridge, sheltered from enemy fire. Only Byland's brigade will be positioned in front of the battle line.
Did Wellington knowingly sacrifice this unit to set a trap for Napoleon? The soldiers on both sides await for the order to attack. Louis Mertens, 29, is a Belgian from Charleroi. He fought for France until 1814. Mertens is now a foot soldier in a Dutch division, Bayland's brigade, and is gearing up, like it or not, to fight his former comrades in arms.
We are in front of the lines, as if we were bait for the French. The idea of fighting against my former brothers in arms turns my stomach. I shall do what I have to, but nothing more. There's no question of taking risks just to please that Dutch officer.
June 18th, 11 a.m.
Baïonnette! Non! Fusil! Opschouder! En goed! Weer!
This is it. We are in the thick of enemy fire. My legs are shaking. Cold sweat is trickling down my back. I I look at my camarade. How many of us will still be standing tonight?
June 18th, 11:30 a.m.
I'm ordering a full-strength attack on Hougoumont Farm. This maneuver will most certainly force Wellington to thin his line of defense.
Ce qui aurait dû être une simple attaque de diversion sur le château ferme de Goumont devient une attaque où les divisions qui sont engagées là attaquent vraiment à fond, sans souci des pertes. Chargez! Donc les pertes vont être terribles, alors que cet endroit n'était pas un objectif en lui-même.
Napoleon tries the whole day to take Hougoumont Farm. He throws thousands of soldiers in wave after wave against the farm, but in vain. Their attacks founder against the tough British defense. June 18th, 1:30 p.m. Napoleon decides to launch a general infantry attack. 17,000 men in all are entrusted with breaking through Wellington's line of defense. The first column must take La Haye-Sainte, the farm held by the Allies. However, Wellington resists. Meanwhile, 3 other French infantry columns advance towards the slope and take on Baylan's brigade.
Nothing seems to be able to stop the French. We've been ordered not to fire before they are 50 paces from us.
Le combat est très rapproché, c'est très lent aussi. On se voyait et on se tuait face à face, quoi. Le fusil a une distance de plus ou moins 100 mètres et il n'a aucune précision. C'est pour ça qu'on fait des tirs groupés. Ils étaient face à la mort et ils voyaient la personne qui tirait dessus.
The French are at less than 50 paces. Several of my camarades are panicking. Some are continuing to shoot nonetheless. Others are fleeing. I'd do the same, but a bloody captain is watching me. Filthy Hollanders.
Voor wat betreft de brigade Bijland, die had het ongeluk opgesteld te worden op de voorhelling aan het begin van de veldslag. Daardoor komt die brigade onder direct artillerievuur te liggen. En die moet zich dan terugtrekken naar achteren om achter de heuvelrug te komen. En dat terugtrekken, dat gebeurt niet op een geheel ordelijke manier. En wordt dan door degenen die het gezien hebben uitgelegd als een vlucht naar achteren. Wat niet terecht is.
After getting Baylan's brigade to pull back, the French continue advancing towards the ridge. But they are unaware of the British forces hiding behind it. Only the enemy guns positioned on the ridge are visible from the French positions.
The mountain is bristling with their cannons. We are advancing in close ranks. Fear in our bellies. The Capitan has ordered us to take anyone who resists us with our bayonets.
Wellington responds with volleys of mitraille. This type of ammunition is composed of small missiles and other scraps of metal that kill and wound everyone in their path.
Fire!
My camarades are falling by the dozen, mown down by the mitraille, but nothing can stop us. When one of us falls, he's replaced immediately by the one behind.
The French infantry columns brave the Allied canyons and continue advancing towards the top of the ridge.
my line of defense is threatened. I'm ordering the Scots Grace to counterattack. It is imperative that our cavalry stops the enemy advance.
The enemy's cavalry suddenly falls upon us, their blades slashing and thrusting. Our column of foot soldiers is decimated in just a few minutes. The Scottish dragoons cross the Vale and even take on our cannons.
The English cavalry has practically scattered the French infantry. Napoleon answers with a counterattack.
Vous imaginez 70 000 tirs de fusils à poudre noire, les vents ne dégagent pas cette fumée, et les Français se demandent où sont les troupes anglaises. Et en face, ils entendent le bruit, ils savent qu'il y a quelque chose qui arrive, mais ils ne savent pas qui.
During the battle, the wounded are carried behind the lines. In those days, bullet wounds were very difficult to treat.
La peur de l'amputation est parfois plus grande que la peur de la mort. Certains récits font état de soldats qui préféreraient mourir que d'être blessés, compte tenu du sort des blessés.
They're afraid of being handicapped, of coming back and being useless for the rest of their lives, and the idea of being miserable. They've all seen old soldiers with one leg begging on market squares and the rest. It happened throughout the 18th century. That, I think, is what they fear, rather than death.
Pince. L'os est touché. On ampute. Prenez. Couteau. Si.
Tenez-le, mon sang.
The war is over for Jacques Desmoulins, but he still needs to win the fight against gangrene. By now, the battle has already killed and wounded thousands on both sides.
In impossible situations, the full horror of seeing their comrades maimed by their side, horses neighing out of fear, the smell, the sound, the death on the battlefield, the suffering. How do you persuade men to throw themselves into battle?
June 18th, 3 p.m. Napoleon has had heavy losses. His infantry attack has failed. The Allies' losses are also great. Blucher, for his part, has reorganized his troops in Wavre and is marching on Waterloo. He hopes to arrive in time to reinforce Wellington's armies. Prussian detachments are announced near the battlefield as of the early afternoon. Napoleon sends in a few reserves to contain them. However, what the Emperor doesn't know at that point is that the entire Prussian army is marching against him.
Le grand drame au moment de la campagne de Belgique, c'est le renseignement, les communications. Tout au long de la campagne, on ne sait pas. On ne sait pas où se trouve l'ennemi, on ne sait pas ce que veut faire l'ennemi, et jusqu'au dernier moment, ni Napoléon ni ses généraux ne sauront exactement où sont les Prussiens.
June 18th, 4 p.m. The arrival of the Prussian vanguard forces Napoleon to strike a major blow.
We must concentrate our efforts to break the enemy lines. I order Maréchal Ney to take La Haye-Sainte at all costs.
Napoleon hopes that with good artillery support, part of his cavalry will finally manage to take La Haye-Sainte and thus break through the middle of the English lines. The rest will then be able to pour into the gap and wipe out the enemy. But Ney doesn't wait for the cannons. He throws his entire cavalry, 10,000 armored horsemen, against the British. Upon seeing the French horsemen rush into the fray, Wellington immediately orders his men to form up in squares to protect themselves.
Guard against cavalry!
The square allows foot soldiers to shoot from all sides and to fend off enemy horsemen with a formidable wall of bayonets. It's almost impossible to break through a square without artillery support.
Hey, ready! Wait for it, boys.
Each shot counts. We've been ordered to aim at groups only, not isolated horsemen. Our officer tells us, don't shoot at the riders. They're wearing cuirasses. Aim at the horses, because they're easier to hit, and their corpses will create obstacles.
Ney and his cuirassiers charged the enemy squares 7 times, in vain, and at huge cost to man and beast.
L'analyse du commandement à la bataille de Waterloo tente à dire que Napoléon n'a pas commandé l'armée française à la bataille de Waterloo, qu'en réalité, il a laissé ses subordonnés prendre des décisions, et notamment le maréchal Ney. Et le départ des charges de cavalerie montre bien que Napoléon n'a pas la situation et n'a même pas son armée en main au moment de la bataille de Waterloo.
Sunday, June 18th, 5 p.m. Napoleon learns that the Prussian army has just poured into the village of Plancenoit, 2 miles from the battlefield. He's stupefied. The Emperor sends out 15,000 men to stop them. Too few to deal with Blucher's men. Napoleon is forced to dip into his reserves to take the village back from the Prussians. Meanwhile, the battle continues to rage on the main front. After bitter fighting and many losses, Napoleon finally manages to wrest the key positions from the enemy line. Wellington is struggling to contain the French advance. He's still waiting for Blucher's reinforcements.
The French are gaining ground. Our situation is very critical. Give me Knight or Blucher.
"7 p.m. Napoleon has all the cards in his hand. He now needs to play them well. But the Emperor has sustained huge losses. Furthermore, he still has no news of Grouchy and his 33,000 men sent out in pursuit of the Prussians.
Grouchy has disappeared. It's as if an earthquake has swallowed his army. He is no longer in Wavre, he is not here. Where then is he? Has he received the order to join me on the battlefield? Our fate depends on it.
Le vrai sujet n'est pas Grouchy a-t-il reçu l'ordre? Le vrai sujet est Grouchy aurait-il pu rejoindre le champ de bataille? Or, le champ de bataille était à plusieurs lieues de là. Si Grouchy, en fin de matinée, s'était mis en marche, il serait arrivé sur le champ de bataille de Waterloo au moment où la bataille était quasiment terminée.
Napoleon is short of men. He has only one reserve left, his Imperial Guard.
We must throw our last forces into the battle. Send in the Garde Impériale, my bravest of the brave. Now, we must either win or die.
La garde impériale, c'est une unité qui a un prestige extraordinaire, qui la plupart du temps ne se battait pas. C'était la réserve ultime, mais quand elle était engagée, elle le faisait à fond. C'était des troupes d'une solidité à toute épreuve.
The men of the Imperial Guard have joined the attack. They're marching at a steady pace, in impeccable order.
Shoulder!
With their tall bearskin hats, they look like giants. I expect a good bayonet stab.
We climb up the ridge in thick smoke. We reach the enemy batteries.
We retaliate as best we can, but for how much longer?
My friends are falling at my side. Wounded comrades are trampled by our men and horses. Death is striking all around. I fear it will soon be my turn.
June 18th, 8 p.m. The Prussians pour onto the battlefield and attack the French troops. The arrival of Blucher's men consolidates the Allied position.
Blücher est arrivé à temps, mais il s'en est vraiment fallu de peu. C'est grâce à cela, à ce renfort vraiment presque miraculeux, que les troupes de la garde ne parviennent plus à progresser.
At last. This time we've got them. This providential support has given all my men new courage. I order an all-out attack.
Victory changes sides. The Allies' attack pushes the French army back, and the soldiers run for their lives. Only a few grenadiers in the Imperial Guard stand their ground. They are ready to die to protect the Emperor's flight.
La garde mort et ne se rend pas!
The image I would describe the Battle of Waterloo representing the end of an era is Napoleon, having left the battlefield and got in his coach, was under such close pursuit by the Prussians he abandoned his very expensive coach, he left behind 1 million francs worth of diamonds and his hat in his rush to get on a horse and save his neck.
It's 10 p.m. when Wellington meets with Blucher to celebrate their victory. Napoleon flees towards Charleroi. In losing the battle, Napoleon loses his gamble. He will never succeed in shattering the coalition that united against him. Morning of June 19th, 1815.
We rose early to look for our camarades amongst the dead and the dying. But human vultures had already stripped the corpses bare. Watches and purses have disappeared, as have their clothes. The heartless looters even finish off the soldiers who are still alive. I even saw some pulling teeth from the mouths of the youngest victims. They say the dentures are selling well.
The Battle of Waterloo was a slaughter. 11,000 fatalities, 35,000 wounded, and 10,000 horses killed in just one day. Napoleon fought his last battle. Back in Paris, the emperor's forced to abdicate. The coalition countries restore Louis XVIII to the throne a few days later. Wellington, for his part, goes home in a halo of glory. He, too, has fought his last battle. After Waterloo, he goes into politics. The English send Napoleon into exile on St. Helena, where he will remain a prisoner until his death. Trapped on this small, remote island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the fallen emperor writes his memoirs. 2,000 pages in which he forges his own legend.
Je crois qu'il n'a pas compris ce qui s'est passé à Waterloo et il a voulu immédiatement à la fois se l'expliquer à lui-même mais l'expliquer aussi à ses contemporains et il avait essayé de se dédouaner, de fuir ses responsabilités dans la façon dont il a dicté l'histoire de la bataille.
For the past 200 years, literature, painting and the cinema have taken hold of and sublimated this myth, Napoleon's legacy, to such a point that in the collective imagination, Napoleon, the defeated, has practically eclipsed Wellington, the victor.
Is that the feeling of pathos, the feeling of sympathy even, for the defeated Napoleon begins to take over. It's almost like a Shakespearean character with a fatal flaw. And that fatal flaw, be it over-ambition or whatever it was.
Ce qui est passionnant aussi, c'est ce que la légende, le romantisme, vous et moi, avons fait de cette bataille de Waterloo, qui n'est plus du tout dans les esprits la bataille telle qu'elle a vraiment eu lieu le 18 juin 1815.
Jacques Desmoulins died of gangrene on July 7th, 1815. Louis Mertens returned to live with his mother in Charleroi. Pierre Lantelme was killed in the last attack, faithful to the motto, "The guard dies, but does not surrender." James Clements found work as a docker in Liverpool. Marcel Lanquet returned home to his wife and children. He was awarded the Medal of St. Helena in 1857.